This is Recruitment Agency Ignition with Andy Whitehead. Helping you build your recruitment employment business fast. Using digital and automation and one-to-many systems, tools, and inbound strategies.
So welcome to this week's Circle call. Today we've got Ken McCarthy on the call. Ken was due to join us about 6 weeks ago, I think, Ken, wasn't it? And last minute,
That's about right.
we had to change that session. So that didn't happen. So at that time, I referenced a couple of things Ken had done, or was doing rather. And the hot seat that day had James Lee on the hot seat. And if you guys remember, James, we put together a 90-day sprint to bring in $2 million worth of revenue. So in James's market, he's in the contract market, and it was to move, I think, from 1.5 million to 2 million in that 90 days. So we had James with that plan. So on the day, the plan was to get James on the call and also get Ken on the call. And with James, we actually dug deep, and then we found out a few anomalies, and we put together a plan to do some bits and pieces. And as it happens, by the way, we've actually got some work to do on James's campaign. If he's on the call today. He's not. Some work to do on that campaign. So we put together a plan. Ken was also on the call that day. And the reason why we had Ken and James on the call was to really show different strategies, different starting position, different industries, different type of client, different types of candidates, different type of win, and different type of constraint. So we're coming from a completely different place in so many different ways, but just as exciting, even more exciting in other ways. So what we're going to do today, Ken, is I want to go through three things, if I may, okay? And just to give you an understanding, if we break this down, Ken. So the first thing I want to do is I want to spend 10 minutes or so on the actual, bear me 1 second. Let me just restart my session on my iPad. I want to do three things, Ken. Number one, I want to spend about 10 minutes on where you were, and really understand what was going on sort of just before you joined us, and maybe the reasons why you joined us. Okay, so we really want to get grips on where you were. So the reason why we do that is because if we think about everything we're doing in our business, we've got in simplistic terms, we've got where we are now and where we want to be. So this is 12 months. And in the middle, we got this, how do we get there? And that's down to different strategies, different campaigns, etc. So now you're here, Ken, okay? But actually what I want to do is go back even further. So before you joined us, okay? So the reason why I want to do that is I want members on the call now, or indeed in the future, to understand what you were going through, understand maybe some of the constraints, understand maybe some of the thought processes, maybe understand some of the things that happen in the business on a daily basis, so they can recognize, shit, I'm doing that. So I want to understand where we were before, okay, Ken? But fairly quickly. Sure. Then I want to come to where we are today. So what's happened now? So let's base it on, for example, retain. We base it on financials. We base it on some high-level variables that everyone's uses maybe as a success factor. So part one is going to be that, Ken, okay? So where you were, where you are now. Second thing we're going to do is dig deep on what's happened. So what strategies have you applied? What's worked? Go through some metrics. Go through some steps. Go through what you recommend people do, maybe how you got through a mental block or whatever it might be. So spend about 10, 20 minutes on that. The next thing we're going to do is end out your next steps, Ken. So when I got the notes from the team, one of the things that I loved, one of the comments you put, Ken, was something around, it's not verbatim, but love my game plan one, done this, I now want to move on to the next stage and see what the bigger picture looks like, etc. So when I read that, I was like, wow, he's thinking really strategically, which I loved. And believe it or not, from a geeky position, that stuff gets me excited. So I was really excited when I saw your notes, Ken. So just to recap again, yeah. So we put some form of boundary around this. Number one, we're going to spend about 10 minutes on where you were, and just high level, literally 1 minute on that, where you are now, where you were. And I'm going to ask you some questions around that. Then number two, so everyone on the call now can apply, adapt, understand that it's a case of doing X, Y, Z. Spend about 20 minutes on what you've done, what you've done up to now. So from when you joined up to now. And then what we're going to do is we're then going to put together a, I think the words you used in your notes, if I remember right, it might be, again, might be not verbatim, but it was roadmap. So let's look at what your roadmap is going to be, and let's do it live on the call now, okay? So what that means is that we can then put this together, a bit like with James. So James, this will be the 90-day sprint, and it's around the Maven strategy, and there's a few things need to fix there. Same with you. Let's put together a roadmap now. So we've got A, some accountability, which is always a good thing, I believe, and B, also let's make it a simplistic set of steps for you. So we'll remove all the options and all the noise, and let's make it a specific set of steps, 1, 2, 3 for you. Is that cool?
Cool. Yeah.
Cool.
No problem.
Awesome. So a lot of people just come on the call now who've not heard or spoken to you before, Ken. So the first thing we're going to do then, Ken, is if we do this. So again, if we spend, first of all, just give me maybe, say, what was going on before you joined us? What's going on in the business? Give us maybe a 1-minute summary of what the business was, i.e. niche and all these good things. And then from there, I'll take you through a set of questions, okay?
Sure. I think when I started, when I came to yourselves, I was covering a number of different industry sectors: mining, private equity, consulting. I suppose there were many niches, really, all related to mining, but there was no real, I wasn't fully covering the market. So it was a bit of a mess. And in turn, the rates were low for the roles that I was bringing in. They were contingent, they were not retained. And I lacked authority, really, I think, in the marketplace. And it was because I was spread over 3 industry sectors. That was the biggest problem. But at the time, my goal was to bring in revenue and then sort the business afterwards. And the other typical problem was inconsistent BD. I lacked the technology, lacked the systems. I'd get a role on, I'd work it, BD stops. So it's feast and famine. They were the biggest problems really that I had.
Great. So we got 2 core constraints there. Number one is the multiple niches. In turn means we're across multiple sectors, which in turn means decreased authority. It means decreased everything, which in turn means decreased rates. And then we're focusing on a contingent market as opposed to, for some, the glory of a retained market or retained market force. And secondly, the inconsistent business development that was happening. So feast and famine phrase used very often. So that's what's happening before then. So so in terms of that was where we were then. Let's focus on where we are. So let's focus on these two core drivers. Okay, so 1, multiple niches, and 2, inconsistent business development. So let's make it specific. So let's focus on these 2 forces first of all. Okay, so if we focus first of all on the multiple niches, where are we now? What's changed, or what happened? Where are we now with this multiple niches?
I think after the initial call that we had and the strategy you set out for me kind of got me thinking, I need to focus on one niche. So I did. I chose mining as the main one. That's where I've got the most experience over the last 10 years. So now I'm just focusing 100% on mining and nothing else. PE has gone to the side. Consulting has gone to the side. I'm still getting roles through, but I'm not working them, just leaving them for the moment. And then just focusing everything around that niche. The CAS, all of the content that I'm doing, fine-tuning the LinkedIn profile, fine-tuning my website, and then really focusing on, laser-targeted data sets. And that was all from the initial call and the focus that you gave me when we first spoke.
Good. So we've gone from multiple niches and trying to catch many rabbits to focusing on just one. Something you said that's very interesting there. Key insight was the organic opportunities are still coming in. So organic opportunities for consultancy, for example, and you've said no to them, and you're remaining fully focused on this niche of mining. So we've had the game plan. We've gone through a mapping process. You made the decision to go on this one niche. One of the things that you said there was because most of your experience in the last 10 years has been inside that niche. Is there any other reasons why you focused on this niche, the decision for this niche, first of all?
No, not really. I think when listen to all of the different webinars that you were doing, avatar and understanding the avatar kept coming up. And I said, that's the key really to nailing the market. If you understand what the customer wants to buy, you can sell him exactly what he's looking for, or you can solve his problems as you say. So I had a better and a deeper understanding of the mining sector, the avatar, their problems in different parts of the world. So I think that was probably one of the, I suppose, main reasons why I went to mining as opposed to PE and consulting, where I didn't have that depth of understanding and experience. So that was the reason why.
Okay, good. Again, key insight there. In fact, my apologies. Let me just check the chat box a second. It's gone crazy. I want to make sure we haven't got a tech problem. 1 second, Ken. Oh, okay. No worries. What the key insight you referenced there around the avatar, etc., and problem. I looked at a business recently, and the business submitted a lot of documents for review, and they had an awful lot of inbound A's, B's, etc. coming in, which is great. However, but the actual financial metrics, i.e., what we're getting paid, weren't stacking up. They weren't happening. And then when I looked at all of the documents together, i.e., the CAS as an example, and the website as an example, and all the components being used as part of that initial traction phase, there wasn't focus on the avatar. Give an example, the client attainment system I looked at, I could have taken that multiple pages in that CAS and put it in any niche in the world. And what the person had done, lesson for everyone, what the person had done is essentially just copied a CAS, a very successful CAS for another industry, from another industry. And they weren't focused on the specifics. So when we go through that CAS process, it's not sexy, but it's massively important. And you've really hit on it then with the avatar process and also the problem solution, which I think is key. So that slower burn, maybe, is not sexy. It's massively important. So we've gone from multiple niches. We've niched down, which is outstanding. From the business development then, we've gone from the inconsistent feast and famine. What's changed there?
I think what I've set up now and how the business looks now is, in my mind, it's, I've got authority, I've got my CAS in place, which is a super sales tool, it really is. I've got industry-specific content, which is relevant and it's high quality. The LinkedIn is really fine-tuned for the niche and nothing else, so there's no room for misunderstanding with anybody looking at it, and same with the website.
Yeah.
I think the strategy that I've got in place, I've got the niche, I've got the data sets, and then the technology to support that with the double R. I mean, having that going in the background, that's taken me away from BD completely. I don't have to worry about dropping the ball on that. It's happening in the background.
Nice.
And I'm coming in the morning and there's 2 or 3 emails or conference calls, which is great. So doing that via quick mail. And, it's more strategic and it's going in a specific direction, which is exactly what I needed.
Love that. Awesome. So we've gone from multiple niches. We're now focused. Business development was up and down, feast and famine. Now we've got predictability. We come in the morning, we've got 2, 3 conference calls or leads waiting for us each morning. One thing I love what you said again, it's really, really subtle, but key insight. You said in the background, and that's exactly what should be happening. I think we get sometimes focused on being on top of, we're running double R, we're running this campaign. And again, it should run in the background. That's why we want to systemize to run in the background. So I love the fact that you've subtly made that point, that distinction. So we've gone from 2 extremes then, which is epic, to be frank, Ken. So first off, guys, on the call now, any questions for Ken, please put inside the chat box. What I'm going to do as we go through, I'll either put them to Ken directly as they come in, or I'll chunk them up into a larger question, which maybe covers multiple questions. So feel free to do that, okay? So, cool. So we got this before and after. If you summarized in maybe three biggest wins, what would they be? Your 3 biggest wins in this time?
in terms of what I've put in place, I think the data sets mapping the market.
Well, in fact, I've asked a really
absolutely key.
Sorry, Ken, I've asked a crappy question. And by the way, I think we've got a slight delay of a second or two between us. A couple of people have picked up on. Let me reframe the question. That's a crappy question. When I say biggest wins, if we think about, so retained is an area for you, for example. Rate you mentioned before, et cetera, et cetera. So the actual, implementation of the strategy, for example, double R, et cetera. That's one of the tactics to get to the win. But from a business perspective, what were your three biggest wins? So, if, for example, without putting words in your mouth, one might be the switch to retained. The tactics, how we get there, we'll come to in a minute. But from a business perspective, what are the three, would you say, the three biggest wins for you? Biggest outcome wins?
I think definitely retained, and that comes on the back of the authority. Fees have gone up. Previously, a fee or a role would come through, and to be honest, that would be the only thing that's in the pipeline. So I would have to take what I could get. Beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah.
So now I'm in a position whereby, if you don't want to pay our fees, Mr. Client, that's okay. I'm sure there's plenty of other firms out there who will work for next to nothing. This is our fee, take it or leave it, essentially. So that's been huge for me as well. So I've managed to increase the fee considerably, and it is retained. I think having, the data sets as well has just changed everything. It really has. I know I would have preached that to my staff over the years as well. But when you're working for yourself and you're spinning 50 plates at a time, you get lost in the fog. And focusing on those things that we've put in place has made all the difference. It's changed everything.
So this is actually the process or the system in the system itself is including, of course, data sets. The system itself, right from mapping or niching, mapping, data, automation, inbound in the morning. That's that end-to-end system. Well, the BD system at the moment. We're only talking early days.
Yeah, absolutely, the whole lot. Yeah, none of them would work on. Yeah, none of them would work on their own, but as a package, and all working to one niche, that's been the difference. That's the change.
Love that. Something I've made a key distinction there. It's that integration of different components, different strategies, and as we referenced last week, when we complete game plan one, when we go into your next game plan, whatever that may be, we don't stop what's happening in game plan one. That runs, as Ken said, quote, in the background. So we got the switch to retained. So just let me know, guys, on the call now, how many of you looking to go retained? Just give me a hell yeah, or not on my radar in the chat box. Your fees have gone up, interestingly. And of course, really what sits underneath it is a system that allows us to get to those two business outcomes. And of course, some of the drivers to making that happen, as you rightly said, are the niching down and the system for the business development, etc. So if we look at the retained and fees going up, as a example, you've got two quite substantial shifts there. You referenced a quote then of Mr. Client, where you can go to someone else in the market who's paying peanuts or thereabouts, something like that. And of course, if we're struggling, we might accept shitty roles. But of course, when we've got the ability to do two things, one, we've got lead flow, inbound lead flow happening. Two, we've got authority. Then we can make the decision on what we do and don't do, including retained. But if we break those down into two, if we may, just very briefly, the before and after as such, if we focus on retained, what's changed from what was happening in the business before, what's happening now? As you said, authority, and you said the CAS is a super sales tool. But if you could summarize them in a couple of bullet points, how were you able to move? In fact, give a 1 minute summary where you were before, in terms of retained, never happening, or most were contingent, and the impact was ABC. So what changed for you to be able to switch to retain so quickly? What can be modelled or learned?
I think the whole package. I mean, focusing on the niche and pitching myself as the expert in the marketplace at a certain level. So I set my stall out quite early with the clients and the data sets that this is what we do. It's C-suite, VP, and director level. That's what we specialize in, nothing else.
Yeah.
So I think setting your stall out early and I suppose going for the roles that you actually want to achieve, that's the key thing. So everything that I've done has been to support that. The website, the LinkedIn profile, even the CAS and the content as well. Everything is geared towards, the C-suite level. So before a client actually comes onto the phone with me, they know that, they're talking to someone who specializes in, these senior roles. I think that's been probably one of the key things. And very much, supporting that with everything that we do. The CAS is a great sales tool that I go through with the clients, and it's very much pitching us as a retained service. So when I do ask the question, they're expecting it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. So you've seeded it in the CAS already that we're a retained business. We are the specialists at this level, C-suite in this marketplace, and we are a retained business. So it's not a shock, is it? It's not going, by the way, this is what we do.
Yeah.
It's being seeded and
you're setting them up from day one. Yeah.
Yeah, and also you're filtering out quote the crap.
Yeah.
And if you've got enough lead flow coming in, then it's a great place to be, which is what I've said about you need two things. One, you need lead flow, and two, you need the authority. Well, in this case, simple authority through the CAS. So retain then, what we've really done, if we think about a very simple model, right at the base of this model, if you think about your game plan one, Ken, is right at the bottom, we had that conversation around niche, didn't we? Had the conversation around niche, then we've made a decision on role and market. Then from there, everything that follows there, so even simplicity of a website, simplicity of a CAS, simplicity of data, simplicity of even a template we send out on LinkedIn, the whole thing goes back to that initial decision. And what's beautiful is when you've got this in place and you've got these core activities, it's something you can replicate again and again if you choose to. Or you can dig deep in the same niche, is what I 99% of the time recommend you do and hope you do. But I love that. So the retain side of it, there isn't anything, there's no secret squirrel stuff there, is there, in terms of what you've done there, Ken? It's just...
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's just going through those initial steps. But what's really important, I'll say it again, look what Ken's done here. He said up front that identify the niche, so mining, then identify the level, i.e. the level of the role. So those two simple distinctions, then everything that follows reiterates that this is what we do. Website, when you run campaigns normally in game plan one, your website and your LinkedIn, for most markets, would be two of the core base authority platforms that would be checked out. But again, there's no rocket science in here. But the CAS, interestingly, I'll come to the CAS in a minute. You made a few good points around that. The second driver that you referenced there was fees. So fees have increased. Could you distill that down to maybe a before and so what's changed, or how did it happen? How did you increase the fees?
I think it's, again, the whole package, the authority, the niche, all of the supporting documentation that you've got, the social evidence on, LinkedIn, the websites, everything else. I mean, if I could put my finger on one thing and just say, yes, it was the CAS, that's made the difference, I'd be wrong. I think it's a combination of, all of those elements together,
stacking up,
and they all lead to the same road. It's almost funneling clients' thoughts down through, well, if you want to engage with BlackRock Resources in Ken, it's going to be a retained search, it's going to be, a C-suite role, and it's going to be within mining somewhere in the world. And it's,
love that.
I suppose subconsciously that's what I've tried to do,
Ken, love that. One thing that's coming across, you're very measured and very, mentioned the right way, very sort of humble the way the transformations happen, steadily, bit by bit. But there's one thing that's probably going through a lot of people's heads, which is this sounds good. Yeah, it sounds great. I've gone through mapping the market, or I've done my website based on this, or I've done this, etc., but I've not had the same result. My fees have not gone up. I've not managed to get retained yet, and I'm pretty certain if you picked all the different components apart, like I did with the gentleman from a few weeks ago, and so the different components is like, well, there isn't one reason why you're not converting, although you've got 50 plus inbound A's happening. So obviously we've got a conversion call problem, But when you look at all the other components, website, LinkedIn, everything else, none of it was niche driven. None of it was using the authority strategies per se. It's trying to encapsulate too many options, if that makes sense. Whereas, for example, with you could say mining, and then every role from mid-manager up, or you could say all roles, etc. But you've been very focused in terms of what you've done, and by proxy, that's meant you've achieved the retain, you've changed the fees, and I think logically, hopefully, everyone can see it makes sense. However, that transition though from I'm going to do this, I'm going to get my website built, I'm going to get my CAS built, etc. Then you've done it. You went through a transitional period. It might have been a week, it might be a month, who knows? But you made a line in the sand at some point, Ken. Whether you know that point consciously, if you do, love you to share it. Yeah. But you made a point. You said, right, fuck it. From now on, this is what we're about. Can you give some context around how that happened? And just some context around how it happened, what to look out for, how to make sure you can get through that period, because that transitional period is the toughest thing.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't find it very hard. I just ran the numbers and I started with the end goal. I said, right, this is what I want to achieve in terms of revenue, in terms of turnover. This is what I want to be earning every month and every year. Which of these three sectors that I have in front of me, you've got mining, you've got private equity, and you've got consulting, which of those can deliver that? And they all could financially. So I niched down again and I said, okay, which ones do I understand the most? Said mining. And which of the avatars do I understand the best? Mining. And literally I came off the phone after we did our first game plan, and I came to that decision in literally 1 hour. That was it. I just drew the line in the sand there and then. I said, right, fuck it. This is what we're doing from now on. And I've got the evidence, the research, and I've, got my mind around those sectors that this one really is, the best one to deliver the end result that I want to achieve. So that was it.
So often we go for a transition period whereby we've got maybe, let's say in your example, we got what was happening before. So let's say we got contingent and we got 3 niches, okay? And then we got where we might be now, which is say mining and C-suite. And then in the middle we got this transition, haven't we? That happens. And then often, I might say to a member, for example, depending on the business and a number of different variables, I might say if you've got organic growth happening, or existing roles or existing placements that you can fill, maybe in this period you keep filling them until you've got campaigns converting to get you out of game plan 1. From what you're saying, then you went through that initial game plan, you did your research based on a number of factors around the niche, and said, "Fuck it, I'm going straight from here to here." Is that what happened?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Okay, that's ballsy. So.
But to be honest, I mean, it was actually well for me. It wasn't a difficult, decision to come to. I'd worked in all of those sectors, and if you asked to hang my hat on one and specialize in one, and that got me thinking straight away. Yep. So I was on the phone. So I've been working with these sectors for quite some time. I mean, everybody's situation is different. Mine, I knew them quite well. I think actually maybe the key decision to go with mining, and this might be the silver bullet. Actually, now that I think about it, I understood the avatar within mining implicitly, because I've been speaking with these CEOs and C-suite clients for 10 years. So I knew the issues, I knew the problems. I think maybe subconsciously that was maybe what led me to decide on mining and go from there. I knew the market was there. Maybe that was it.
So I think in this case, because there are two extremes in. On the other hand, you might have a member. For example, I got off a call just now with Keith. Everyone knows Keith. And when Keith joined us, it's many years ago. My memory's not as sharp as it should be at some points. But when Keith joined us, I didn't realise it. Keith actually went into we did something similar, but we went to a completely brand new niche, completely brand new niche. And then the metrics Keith just shared was brought in 22 clients, I think, and 483 candidates. And once he got his first campaigns running, and it's a completely new niche. So he actually didn't have the background. He didn't have the avatar knowledge that you've got. The reason why I'm saying that is anyone's listening to the call now and they're saying, well, Ken's got this background. Shit, I'm in a new niche. There are different drivers, guys, just so you know. So don't, you can hang out on any different one. The key thing that I'm interested in here is this word, the decision that Ken made. Because with that decision, Ken then made the decision of, right, mapping, data, website, content, CAS, all focused on that one vertical. And I think when we make a weak decision, i.e., yeah, I'm going to do this, and then we look at something a month later or 2 months later, the reality is that decision has been it's not been a solid decision. Guess what? When we did the mapping, I thought we identified that there were 50 sub-niches inside the law, in your law industry, but we're going to focus on one of them to start with. Yeah, we are. And then you check out the website, etc., and you see that they're still doing law, they're still doing admin, they're still doing etc., etc. They've not really made a true decision, because everything that follows that is where you get that niche power, isn't it? You get that authority, and you get that focus, and you get, in your case, the increased fees in the retained. So that decision, I think, for everyone listening, I think that's a key thing here, is a key driver. One thing, Ken, if I may, you mentioned the use of the CAS and how you use that as part of your sales process.
Yep.
And again, we're not dealing with schmucks here, are we? We're dealing with, very high-end individuals. They're not going to be suffering fools. Like in your marketplace, going back many, many years, I was into it, interfacing with, it was Cowan International, and saw some of the inner workings and bits and pieces that's going on. So who you're dealing with and your competitors, etc., can be quite a tough marketplace. So if you could do this, your before and after in terms of the sales process, and you've mentioned use of the CAS, can you give me what that looked like? So before we were doing this, or conversely, you might say the sales process is now this, and the reason why the CAS is working is because of this, because obviously you've used it in the correct manner. Could you give me a breakdown of how you've actually used the CAS properly?
I think everything starts with the double OR, and I get the best results by using an NPC, and that NPC is chosen based on the avatar, knowing the avatar, their problems, so I find a candidate that will solve those. So once I get it out and I get a response, the first thing that I do when I get an A or a B is they get the CAS immediately.
So if we break it down to, sorry, Ken, we got a slight delay. My apologies. I'm not in dick mode. I'm doing this with love mode. I just want to make sure that, because people get the people who are trying to on the call now, whether it be a member of the team or it be the business owner. So if we actually broke it down to a step. So step one is then we send out our double R campaign. We send out our campaign. Yep. In your case, it's a targeted NPC, but keyword ultra targeted. You then get a message back in your inbox. Is that right? You get a reply in your inbox.
Correct.
Yep. And
maybe an A or a B.
So you might get an A or a B, and I imagine you get more Bs and As. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure. Yep. Of course.
So we get A and B replies, and just so everyone's clear on what that means to you, what is an A response for you, and what's a B response for you, just as an example?
An A response would be, yes, we're interested in the candidate, or I think we should have a chat because we're recruiting for a role at this moment in time.
Okay.
That's what an A would be. So it's qualified, they're looking, and they want to engage.
Okay. Yep. B?
B would be, yes, thanks. Sounds interesting, but not at the moment. Let's keep in touch.
Yeah, great. So definitions are the same then. Great. So you got A's and you got B's. Yep. Good. So one thing, another just a opportunity for most people is the reluctance to follow up on B's, and that's
it's that's 90% of the market.
Yeah, exactly.
90% of your market.
Yeah, in your case, 90% of the market is B's, but so this gentleman we looked at, he had loads and loads of A's, which is great. However, most will be B's. So let's do this then. So you send out your campaign, you get responses of A's and B's. So yes, let's have a chat. B, let's keep in touch. So either they don't trust you or they're actually not hiring now, one of the two. So what happens next? Step 3.
Yeah, once the CAS Once the CAS goes out,
So step
with
3
the A's, it's follow up on.
So sorry, just break it down, Ken, to real simple terms. So you get the reply, and to the A's, you send a message saying what to the A's, and do you attach the CAS? And to the B's, you send a message saying what?
Yep. To the A's, I would send the candidate that they're interested in.
Yep.
Secondly, would be the terms of business. 3 would be the CAS. And I would ask the question, when do you want to speak, essentially?
Great. So you attach all 3 of those to the same response, do you?
Correct. Yep.
Great. So you attach the CAS right up front. Love that. When do you want to speak? So we got a binary, almost yes, no. We're not going to fuck about here. Let's get this done or not. So we're not wasting our time. But the CAS is attached up front, which overcomes a ton full of objections. Love that. So the B's are, hey Ken, not now, but not really. So with the B's, what do you send back to the B's?
Yeah, basically, I mean, what I write to them is, thanks for your email, no problem. You know, please find attached some information on us for future hires. And I attach the CAS and just send that. Simple.
Okay. What do you frame your CAS at? Do you call it do you say information, or do you actually reference the name? What do you do?
No, I just say, please find attached some info on us for future hires. That's exactly what I type in the box.
Awesome. Awesome.
Discover how to build your recruitment employment agency using one-to-many automation and inbound strategies before anyone else in your market specialization. Check out recruitmentmarketinginternational.com.